So Artur Beterbiev is going to be fighting Dmitry Bivol in a couple of hours from now. So several hours from now, probably 3, 4, 5, 6 hours from now. And truth be told, I actually think that this fight, to some extent, for how good it actually is actually being slept on quite a bit. Now, for me, this is a dream fight. This is a fight that's it's going to determine who's the best fighter in the light heavyweight division. It's a rare instance where you have two of the best light heavyweights fighting each other. They're both undefeated and they both have vastly contrasting styles. Now, the thing that makes this fight so intriguing is the fact that this fight, you basically got two fighters that's from Russia, so Eastern Europe, and they both got completely different styles. You got Artur Beterbiev, who's a complete puncher, he's got 20 fights, 20 wins, and 20 knockouts. Who none of his opponents have reached the final bell, have all been stopped by him, and he's fought very good opponents. He's managed to get the WBC, the IBF, and the WBO title. He is seen as the Ring Magazine light heavyweight king, and he is on the top of the division, right? He's the best fighter in the light heavyweight division, and he's seen as the pallbearer of the light heavyweight division. And then you got Dmitry Bivol, whose biggest win is against Canelo, who at the time was seen as the pound for pound king. Also, Dmitry Bivol is undefeated and he's beaten very good fighters. He also beat Ramirez as well. And he's also is seen as a very slick boxer. He's the complete opposite of Artur Beterbiev. Artur Beterbiev, although he is a puncher, is very good technically, but Dmitry Bivol is seen as more slick. So this is a very contrasting style matchup. This could be seen as one of the best fights in Eastern European boxing, professional boxing history. Might be seen as one of the best fights in Russian history, because both Artur Beterbiev and Dmitry Bivol are Russians. So, truth be told, this is an incredible fight. This is a fight. It's like a dream fight. The fact that both of them are undefeated, both of them have not taken a loss yet, and it's at a time where all the titles are on the line. This is a very much a dream fight. This is a fight that boxing fans have been clamoring for years. I've spoken about it. I think a couple of years ago. I said this is the one fight. If I wanted to see a fight, I wanted to see this fight. And to some extent, I actually think this fight is harder to call and more interesting than Usyk versus Fury, Spence versus Crawford, and obviously Mayweather versus Pacquiao. Now I'm going to list the reasons why I think they are actually better than them fights that I've just mentioned. So the one fight that I've mentioned already is obviously Usyk versus Fury. Now the reason why I think Usyk versus this fight is better than Usyk versus Fury. I mean, for the longest time, Usyk wanted to fight Fury, and Fury ducked him and dodged him and didn't want to fight him. He took on opponents like Derek Chisora instead of fighting Tyson instead of fighting Usyk. Tyson Fury ducked and dodged Tyson Fury ducked and dodged Usyk for a very long time, and the reason why he ducked and dodged him is I think he knew that he was a threat to him. The only reason why he fought him eventually is because the boxing fans turned against him and they said, "Oh, you need to fight Usyk for the undisputed." And then on top of that, what you need to understand is the fact remains that the Saudis offered him, I think they offered him like £200 million to fight Usyk. And at that time, that's just so much money that he could not turn it down. So that's why he took that fight on. So to some extent, I always had the preconception that Usyk would win that fight. I always had the preconception that Usyk would win that fight because of the fact that Fury for the longest time wanted to duck him. Fury knows boxing, so the fact that he's ducking in a fighter, it tells me that the fact remains that he sees him as a threat. Okay, he sees him as a fighter that he potentially could lose to. That's why he ducked him. I mean, he would have been more than happy to just fight the Derek Chisoras of the world, to fight lower level opposition rather than fight Usyk, who at the time beat Anthony Joshua and had all of the belts. So, in my opinion, the fact that he ducked him, that made me think that Usyk would win that fight. So, for the longest time, I thought Usyk was going to win that. Then, when we get to Mayweather versus Pacquiao, not Mayweather versus Pacquiao, Spence versus Crawford. Again, a similar reason why I thought Crawford was going to win that fight was because of the fact that Crawford for the longest time was vying to fight Spence, but Spence for the longest time wanted to duck Usyk, wanted to duck Crawford. Now the reason is there was many other factors that went into it that made me think that Crawford was going to win that fight. Another factor that went into it was the fact that um, when you look at it logically, right? I believe Spence was walking away from a car crash. So the fact that he had this car crash looming over his head, um, for the longest time, felt like there's no way that he's ever going to be the same again. Now, don't get it twisted. After the car crash, he had some good wins. He had a win against Ugas, and he had a win against Danny Garcia. These are good wins. But if you look at it logically, there's no way that his body was ever going to be the same after that car crash. And we was right because we saw what happened in that fight. I mean, he got completely beaten up and he got completely whitewashed. And then finally, when we come to so that fight wasn't that close for me to call. I knew Crawford was going to win that fight, and then finally we get to Mayweather versus Pacquiao. Now this was the most disappointing for me because this fight happened after Mayweather ducked Pacquiao, and let's be real, for the longest time he waited for him to lose to Timothy Bradley. He waited for him to get knocked out by Marquez, and that's when he decided to fight him. It was 6 years out of out of Pacquiao's prime. Like Mayweather should have fought Pacquiao when Pacquiao has just come off his win against Margarito. When he beat Ricky Hatton and when he beat Cotto, that would have been the perfect time for Mayweather to fight him. But he waited 6 years after that point, and Pacquiao at that time has taken losses to Timothy Bradley, and he obviously got knocked out by Marquez, and that's when he decided to fight him. Now the fight became as big as it became. It's the biggest fight in boxing history in terms of how lucrative it was and how much money it made both participants. But in terms of its value, in terms of how good the fight actually was, the fight was a massive disappointment, and it was a black eye for the sport. Now we finally come to the fight that we're talking about today, which is DMITRY BIVOL versus ARTUR BETERBIEV. This fight, don't get it twisted. Beterbiev is 39, so he's approaching 40. If they would have fought when both of them was in their prime, I would have went for Beterbiev. But the fact that Beterbiev is older now, it adds a bit of intrigue. Maybe he'll grow old overnight. We already know about the amount of weaknesses, like the amount of injuries Beterbiev has on his body, and the fact that all of these issues are happening with his physical health. So, but then obviously Bivol's ex-wife has come out now and exposed the fact that Bivol has got all of these injuries as well, despite Bivol because of their marriage failing. So the fact is, right, there's a lot of unknowns going into this fight. I keep switching. 1 minute I think Beterbiev is going to win. Next minute I think Bivol is going to win. And the fact is, right, the fight is intriguing because we know Beterbiev got dropped by Callum Johnson. Now Bivol doesn't have the level of power that I don't think Callum Johnson has. I don't think he's as much of a puncher as Callum Johnson is, but the fact is Beterbiev has been wobbled and has been hit a bit. He obviously showed a bit of vulnerability there, and obviously you got Bivol who got hurt by Lyndon Arthur in their last fight. I think he wobbled him with a body shot. I think he did hurt him with a body shot. And on top of that, Bivol also got he got hurt by Joe Smith at the end of the 10th round of their fight. I think he wobbled him, but he was lucky because he got hit right when the bell came, and that actually saved him. It's very similar to when Devin Haney got rocked by Leonares. He got hit and he got wobbled, but then the bell just saved him. So the fact is, if Bivol's getting rocked by these fighters, Lyndon Arthur and the likes of Lyndon Arthur and Joe Smith, who have got nothing in terms of power compared to Beterbiev, then how the hell is he going to handle Beterbiev's power? But then you got Beterbiev who's hurt. He's hitting 39. Obviously, Bivol's younger at 33. He's got all of these injuries. He's not as good technically as Bivol. So there's so many questions that are going into this fight, and it makes it such an intriguing fight. And each time I keep switching between the two. I keep thinking Beterbiev is going to win. Then I think Bivol's going to win. I think Beterbiev is going to win because he's a puncher. He's a pure puncher, and Bivol's been hurt by lesser fighters before. But then I think Bivol's going to win because he's younger. He's more flat. He's got better boxing skills, outboxing skills. He's quicker. He's faster. He's got more range. So the fact that I keep switching between the two, I think that this is a fight that's just too close to call. You can't really put it down. A lot of people keep saying Bertabiev's going to knock him out, but then there's people saying that Bertabiev might beat him by a decision. But then you got people saying that Bivol's gonna maybe Bivol knocks him out because he grows old overnight. So there's so many tangibles going into this fight that it's hard to pick who you think is going to win. And because of that reason, I think this fight is easily the most intriguing fight or in boxing right now. Is very much the most intriguing fight in boxing right now. No fight comes close. And on top of that, I think it's a more intriguing fight than Usyk versus Fury. Um, Spence versus Crawford, and obviously Mayweather versus Pacquiao, because there's more tangibles going into this fight. You got both of them are undefeated. Both of them have got a lot of questions surrounding them. And both of them are in a position where they're going to fight a style that's a complete opposite of their own. So, with that being said, this is definitely a legendary dream fight. I think you could say this is probably the greatest fight in a Russian Eastern Europe Eastern European professional boxing history, and it's a much more intriguing fight. It's definitely, I think it could be the fight of the decade. I mean, just based on everything that I just mentioned before, it could be the fight of the decade. And on top of that, it's a bit of history being made as well, because I don't think we've ever had an undisputed light heavyweight champion in the four belt era. I think we may have had it previously. I think Roy Jones, but Roy Jones was undisputed. But I don't know if it was in the four belt era or if it was the three belt era. If it's the four belt era, then fair enough. But still, getting another undisputed light heavyweight champion after 25 years, after Roy Jones was the last person to hold that title. I mean, this is history being made. So this is an intriguing fight on so many levels. I think this is the potential fight of the decade. I just hope the fight itself is great. Because Spence versus Crawford, no offense to Spence, but Crawford completely whitewashed him and beat him up and knocked him down like 3 times. Mayweather versus Pacquiao was very boring. Usyk versus Fury was more exciting than them two, but and then there was many level changes but stuff. But let's be real, Usyk won that quite convincingly. So I'm hoping that this fight, and I'm hoping it's got the potential to be, is better than all them other three aforementioned fight that I mentioned. Obviously, Usyk versus Fury, Crawford versus Spence, and Mayweather versus Pacquiao. So this has the potential to be a better fight than all of the three other fights. And on top of that, going into the fight, it seems more intriguing because we just don't know what's going to happen. So you tell me what you think. What do you think? Who do you think is going to win? And obviously, we don't have that much long to wait because the fight's about to happen soon. So tell me what you think and like and subscribe to the channel. I've got a lot more content coming your way. Peace.